Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Now, you are most welcome back. So we're turning to events at Old Trafford last night. Very happy to say Andy Mitten, editor of United We Stand, is with us. Evening, Andy.
Good evening.
1-0 defeat to Wolves. João Moutinho on 82 minutes. A first win for Wolves at Old Trafford since 1980. They were really good, and you don't want to take too much away from them. But needless to say, the story here is Manchester United. They had 9 shots to Wolves' 19. Just 2 of them on target. And Ralf Rangnick already seems like a man under pressure. Even the nature of the interviews afterwards and the tone of the post-match discussion on TV. This is like a guy who's 3 years in and people are looking at the job he's doing saying, well, where is this going? So it's amazing how this job quickly eats you up.
It does, and it's one of the biggest jobs in world football. I think you're right in everything you say, especially about Wolves. Wolves deserve to win. Wolves felt that they deserved something from the league game at the start of the season, which Manchester United won. And I think even Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would say, of all the games his team won before he left, that was the one where perhaps he didn't deserve to win. Wolves were impressed at Old Trafford. When they came up in 18, Ruben Neves was fantastic. But it's the first time that they've won. And the story, as you say, is not about Wolves winning, although it will be in Wolverhampton, but Manchester United losing. And the mood has just hit the floor. It really has slumped, because it wasn't just a defeat at home to Wolves. It was a defeat after a series of really unconvincing displays by Manchester United. Most recently at Newcastle, a team who'd won 1 out of 19 last week. That was when I last spoke to you. But even before that, when United beat Norwich and Crystal Palace and drew against Young Boys, the team was not playing well. Okay, half an hour in the first game under Rangnick against Palace at home. But aside from that, the fans have been asking what's changing here. Well, what has changed is that the team have stopped losing matches, has stopped conceding as many goals, but very little by the way of chance creation and just really boring football.
Yeah.
And United fans are not stupid. They know what they're watching, and they're just watching football which falls well short of the standard that they expect. Now, they're not putting all that on the manager because he's not been in the job for a long time, but some of it is on the manager and some of it is on the players as well.
Well, I have my suspicions what every single fan would say if they were vox popped afterwards and asked, what do you think of this 4-2-2-2-2 business? It's just not worked. And you mentioned the Newcastle game. The last half hour there was no formation. I mean, it was shambolic, really, is the most generous term. Aside from that first half hour against Palace, it's hard to think of anything promising about what Ralf Rangnick's bringing to the party here.
Yeah, the first half was good against Burnley when United scored 3 goals, which isn't a given. But you're right. In the first half against Palace, there was a noticeable difference. But even in that game, Ayew should have scored for Palace just before Manchester United did score the goal. And it's really worrying because United are not even playing the best teams. Wolves were the best side that United have played since Rangnick took over. Although when he took over, it followed those 3 games which Michael Carrick had been in charge. And United did really well. That draw at Chelsea when they'd gone ahead. Excellent result in Villarreal and beating an inform Arsenal team at Old Trafford. Carrick made his decision to move on, even though the manager wanted him to stay. And Kieran McKenna and Martin Pert, 2 other coaches, they also moved on, even though the manager wanted them to stay. So this is part of the problem you've got here. New coaches have been brought in the half-light of a Manchester winter to work with players, not in the way that they would hope because of all the COVID restrictions. The training ground has been closed down, but other clubs have got problems with COVID as well. And there's a lot of talent at Manchester United, and the collective level of that talent at the moment is way, way below what it should be.
Because Rangnick was asked after the game last night about the pressing or the lack of pressing, and he said, yeah, no, we didn't. And after 15 minutes, it was apparent that we couldn't get into the positions to hurt them in that part of the pitch, and they had constant outballs to their wing-backs. It's so rudderless in that he arrives and you know where he's at his most powerful is going to be the first game, and in that first half hour against Palace there's a real effort to press, and you think, well, here's the godfather of gegenpressing and he's going to try and make Manchester United a pressing team. Now, most of us looked at that and said, well, with Ronaldo leading the line, best of luck. But they made a fist of it against Palace for half an hour. And since then, nothing. And you kind of wonder, like, what are they? What are they going to be if Ronaldo is playing and if this team can't seem to even press Wolves at Old Trafford in front of 75,000? Like, the best they've managed, Andy, maybe in the last 2-3 years under Solskjaer, is when he looked at the team and said, we don't have a controlling midfield player in there. Let's just be a damn dangerous counter-attacking team. And they were. And you think of their better results, Spurs away or PSG or some of those other results, the Man City results, they had the horses to be a really good counter-attacking team. They didn't have the horses to be a controlling possession team when Solskjaer tried to move that way. They didn't have the horses to be a pressing team. That really blew up in their faces against Liverpool at Old Trafford when they tried to press, and it was apparent they just couldn't do it. And now Rangnick's come in and tried to press. They look like they've tried to do it for half an hour. The rest of the time, I don't really know. And so there's nothing to be optimistic about here. Like, this whole thing has really gone out of control.
There's very little to be optimistic about. You covered lots of different points there. And I sense that the tone of this conversation is going to be pretty bleak, because that's how I feel about Manchester United at the moment. There are two tiny shreds of optimism. Phil Jones came back and had a good game. He was Manchester United's best player. Yeah. And the second best player was probably David De Gea. He's having a good season, but that's partly because Manchester United are under the cosh so much and the goalkeeper's having a lot of things to do. The rest of them, they leave a huge amount to be desired. And there looks like a complete lack of control in games, which has been the case throughout most of the season. As you said, Ole Gunnar would often counter-attack with great effect. The best example of that last season was against Manchester City away, when Anthony Martial, remember him, was the man of the match, and United won the game against the best team in the country, a team who was still the best team in the league, and the league's won already. As far as I can see, I just cannot see Manchester City dropping points. But my concern is more with Manchester United, and it alarms me because it wasn't supposed to be like this. The team finished second last year, and if we compare like for like with where United are after 19 games, well, after 19 games last year, United were top of the league. And this year, the seventh, albeit with a couple of games in hand. United have conceded more goals this year, and they've scored fewer goals as well. So you can look at a whole different number of statistics. Last night against Wolves, the number of times the players gave the ball away was also alarming. And we're talking 5 or 6 players here, which leads me to think that the confidence of the players is lower than it should be. I know that there are issues in terms of the new coaches coming in. It's a new working environment for the manager. He still talks a good game. He's impressive when he talks to the media, and I've spoke to him before and after several matches. He's very clear, he's very concise with his answers. He's clearly an intelligent man. But when he got the job, I spoke to people in Germany who know him far, far better than I ever did. And they said he's a builder. He builds projects which take 3 years. And he's not got that at Manchester United this season. He's got 6 months to impress. And he's got a hell of a job. He's got a really, really difficult job because there are big egos in that dressing room. You've got some players who want to leave the club. You've got his coaches who are largely unknown. They've got to win over some of the biggest names in world football. And when the team stops winning and other teams pull away, that's when blame starts being apportioned. As a journalist, my job is to find the truth out. And I'm finding there's 3 or 4 different versions of the truth with Manchester United at the moment because it is so subjective. And yeah, that was clearly a terrible result against Wolves. The night before, I'm looking at the league table thinking, if Manchester United win the games in hand, they're going to shoot right up to... And as I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, why are you being such an idiot? This is an illness. They're not going to win the games in hand. They've been so unconvincing throughout this season. Even in the first 5 games when I think United won 4 and drew 1, they were unconvincing, and Wolves was one of those games. Even in that Newcastle game when Ronaldo came back, Newcastle controlled the game for large passages of that match. So there's been worries throughout this season. The form fell off a cliff. That's why Ole lost his job. And the new manager bounce has not happened with Ralph Rangnick.
Well, do you know what was also incredibly striking last night was the Old Trafford crowd have, post-Ferguson, generally had his words ringing in their ears. Your job now is to back the manager. And in fairness to them, they have been loath to turn on a manager. It's very rare there's been boos at Old Trafford, and it's been a long 8 years and counting. It's going to be another long 8 years, I suspect, given where they are now. So Rangnick's barely in the job. This was his first defeat last night, and he substitutes Mason Greenwood, and the Old Trafford crowd boo. Now, I thought that was really telling. They're fed up with this whole situation. They don't like the early signs of what this guy's about. There's no emotional investment in him because he's probably gone at the end of the season anyway. I just thought that was a real sign that this thing is now going to get messy. If they don't even have this sense of, oh look, we're a club that stands by the manager. Ferguson, 26 years, he told us keep standing by the next manager. That's kind of our thing. I mean, that was a massive departure from what we've seen under the previous managers, and I suspect now we're going to see booing this season at Old Trafford around what I would presume to be several bad results on the way. And it's going to get messy now, Andy. It's going to get really messy.
Well, it could do, but whenever we've been in this point in recent years, somehow, largely under Solskjaer, Manchester United have managed to turn things round.
Yeah.
I'm not optimistic about where the team are right now, and that decision to take off Greenwood was booed for two reasons. One, because fans were seeing the team outclassed, and two, because he was one of Manchester United's best player, and it didn't make much sense to bring him off. Granted, Bruno Fernandes did very well when he came on, although he should have scored. And your other point about the emotional investment, yeah, Ralph Rangnick, he will be given a fair chance by patient Manchester United fans at matches, but he isn't a club hero like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was. And Solskjaer was hugely popular. Might not have always come across online, and often it didn't. And there were a sizable number of people who wanted him out after 6 months, after a year. But in real life, at the club and at the games, he was a very, very popular man. Now, by the end of his time, you go to places like Atalanta and you'd speak to fans, and nobody thought that he should stay, but they wanted him to. They wanted him somehow to turn it around, and that didn't happen. And he lost his job. But there isn't that bank of credit for the new manager, for his coaches, and the frustration is much more likely to boil over. Not just with him, because I believe that every manager should be given a good amount of time, but with the players and with the ownership of the club. So there were anti-Glazer chants at Old Trafford last night against Wolves coming out the Stretford end. The Stretford end was loud. You also saw a section of Old Trafford trialling safe standing legally for the first time since 1994. So I think that was really encouraging as well. A tiny sliver of a positive amid all those negatives.
I think one of the reasons people this morning and last night were so sure that there's serious trouble at this club was the Luke Shaw interview as well. This is more than just teething trouble and a new manager struggling to get his message across and disrupted preparation. So here's a glimpse of, not the full interview, because I mean, this is not a guy being misquoted. This is not one line being devoured and taken apart and blown up into something it's not. This was a long interview, so this is not the full interview. So Luke Shaw talked about the lack of effort, frankly, and Patrick Davison here in Sky Sports goes back to those kind of points. Have a listen.
Just the last one on the team, because you said there was a sense almost of not being all out there together. What do you mean by that, and how do you get it? 'Cause it's a criticism you have faced in the past.
It's tough. I think you look at our squad, you look at our team, the players we have. We have unbelievable quality. We have great quality, and I think sometimes quality isn't enough. I think, like I said, we need to bring the intensity. We need to bring, being more aggressive, and we need to bring more motivation. I think, maybe from the outside today, it didn't look like we had any of them three. But inside the dressing room, we know we want to win. We know what we want. But I think when we step out on that pitch, we need to give 100%, everything we've got. And I'm not saying, not everyone did, but I think to win these types of games against a tough team like Wolves, we all need to be 100% committed, because we know it's always close games, whoever they play. And yeah, like I said, it's just tough and disappointing, but we have time now to refocus back. We got a long training week, and maybe the manager can bring some more ideas that what he wants on the pitch.
Thanks, Luke. Thank you. Cheers.
There we are. To be fair to him, I didn't think the last comment was a major dig at Rangnick. I thought it was a a more generous point that he hasn't probably had the time as a manager to get his ideas across. But who knows? Everyone's under pressure right now. Earlier in the interview as well, I thought he was far more even damning of his teammates. In effect, Andy, most people interpreted him as saying not everybody on that pitch, in fact quite a few, are not trying as hard as they could be.
I thought Luke Shaw looked crestfallen about his body language, the words that he said. And when I first heard it, I was struck by the last line there. And I thought he's searching to his manager. He's not having a dig, but give us some ideas, because I know what's going on there. And I know that it's difficult for Ralf Rangnick and his new coaches at the moment with the players for the reasons that I outlined. I am told that the players are trying, but then who's telling me that? I'm getting feedback from all sorts of different sources who know that. I think they want to do well. I don't think they deliberately go out there to lose football matches. I think they want it to work out, but the confidence looks really low. And right throughout that game, Wolves were the better side, and those statistics you said at the start, and we can add even more. The number of corners that Wolves had, Manchester United are not scoring goals from set pieces. There are so many worrying areas, and even the players that we had faith in. Like 2 weeks ago, I was writing things like, it will be great when Rafael Varane and Edinson Cavani are back. And they're back, and somehow they get sucked into the mire as well. Cavani was very good when he came on at Newcastle, and I think Varane is an excellent player. Well, at least alongside Phil Jones, obviously. He's got an experienced master next to him. But the others, that midfield was a painful watch last night. Scott McTominay completely overrun with Nemanja Matic. And that's part tactical as well. And yet McTominay had been the best player on the pitch against Burnley. So there's consistency issues here as well. You're getting players putting in 8 out of 10 performances, and the next week 5 out of 10 performances. But results control the mood of everything. If United would have won that game 1-0 last night, I'm not even sure you would have rang me. I think that the mood would have been different. It's like he's finding his feet and he's managing to win while he's finding his feet. But when that goal went in after 82 minutes, it absolutely sank. And I had my lads outside the ground selling United We Stand. And that is a very real environment where after the game, they are hearing what people are saying. They are soaking in some of those comments. And trust me, they were not nice after the game yesterday. And there's a feeling that this season is already coming to nothing. And a very capable Aston Villa team could knock Manchester United out the FA Cup next week. And then what? You know, the 4th place, okay, other teams are dropping points as well. But Manchester United need to get a run out of somewhere. And that hasn't happened at all this season.
One last point I'd be very curious about is the mood in the dressing room, the atmosphere in the dressing room, the level of unity that's there. One thing that you felt Solskjaer had for the bulk of his regime was a sense of unity, seemed to restore that bit of spirit post-Mourinho, and that does not seem to be the case anymore. Bruno Fernandes was always liable to throw his hands in the air and always had a body language issue, but that has very much continued now, and naturally when results aren't as good, he's doing it more often. And then there's a sense that Ronaldo, I don't know, is Mason Greenwood's nose out of joint? I don't know, is the Bruno Fernandes-Ronaldo dynamic great? I mean, they seem to get on in certain points. In other ways, I mean, you miss your first penalty with Ronaldo standing behind you, and then he's on penalties, and you used to be the main man and you're not the main man anymore. I don't know how well that sits with you. The Cavani situation was tricky. Where's Harry Maguire? I don't know. A lot of young players in there as well, looking around at all these dynamics. Managers changing. Pogba's his own entity. It does not seem like a good dressing room anymore. And Gary Neville's made that point about the body language. What are you hearing about the clickiness or otherwise in there now? Where is that dressing room?
It's not a great dressing room. And a lot of that is down to the confidence. You've got big egos. You've got a lot of frustration as well, because these are players who wanted to be winning titles. One of the reasons they joined Manchester United was they were sold a dream. Obviously, they're well paid. That goes without saying. And when the team is 7th in the league, there's a lot of frustration there. Now, if you ask 25 players or people close to them what their version of events is, you're not going to get one straight answer, because the player who's getting picked every week and doing all right is going to give you a very different answer to someone who feels like he should be getting picked every week and isn't doing all right. And there were always issues, even when Ollie was there and things were going great. The guy who was number 15 or just making the match day squad rather than a specific number, was never delighted because he wasn't playing as much. And Ollie obviously had his favourites as well. What I've said is I know there are issues with training at the moment. The new manager's trying to put across his ideas, and there are unhappy players. There are players who want to leave. Anthony Martial wants to leave.
And are the issues they don't like the messages he's given them or what he's advocating? I did read at one point they're not happy the training slightly later in the day. Surely it's more than that.
Yeah, it is more than that. I mean, You've got the half-light of a Mancunian winter. You're training in the dark at 3:45, which isn't great for everybody. And these type of things tend to seep out when things are not going well. When you're winning, you don't hear anything like this. And you've got a new manager mid-season trying to put his ideas into place with the coaches that the players have never heard of. Popular coaches have left, coaches who the manager wanted to keep. Michael Carrick, Kieran McKenna, Martin Pert. I wrote that a couple of weeks ago. Nobody wants to hear that because they associated them with a past failed regime under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. They want to hear about the shiny new manager and how he's going to change everything and how everything's going to improve. So the fans also are part of this because they really welcomed in Cristiano Ronaldo, and now people are saying, not sure that was quite the right thing.
And what's your read on that? Because I would question it. I wonder what he's done to the dynamics in there.
People are extremely divided on it. You can argue both sides very, very strongly. Manchester United wouldn't be in the Champions League if Ronaldo wouldn't have been playing to get those late great winners, but the players around him, their productivity levels have dropped right off. The number of goals being scored has dropped right off. The number of goals the other players are scoring, it's a real worry. And I wonder how Manchester United are going to get out of this with an interim manager who, if he does really well, will get power because he'll be seen as the main man who knows what he's doing to influence the decision of who's going to replace him. And if he doesn't, I'll never forget what one home and away Manchester United fan said to me when he got the job. Who is this guy? And if he's that good, why has he not been managing? And why has he not been at any of the top clubs in Germany? Sounds like a bit of a blagger to me. Now, that same person who goes everywhere with Manchester United, after the team had a couple of decent results, he's like, I'm prepared to give him a chance. But that just shows how fan sentiment can really roll with it. And these are the conversations that Manchester United fans, I'm sure many of them are watching and listening to this at the moment, they'll have very, very strong opinions about whether Ronaldo was right or wrong to come back. And on all of the players, and some of them will be doubting the new manager, and some of them quite rightly will be saying he deserves time, and every manager does deserve time. But it's a pretty grim place for Manchester United right now, especially with City looking so good and winning absolutely everything.
Perfect storm. Andy Mitten, editor of United We Stand. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Andy Mitten there with us live on The Line. Our football coverage is brought to you by Sky Catch, the biggest live Premier League games every weekend on Sky Sports. Pat Nevin will be with us, by the way, after 9 on the Football Show.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, proud partner and supporter of the Republic of Ireland women's national football team.
This is News Talk.